Honestly, I loved casting these matches. I know it's really hard to fight, but it's such a hype game. This is the evolution of the cannon rush, iconic cheese tactics in StarCraft. This is from the esports storyteller. This guy's got a great YouTube channel. We'll be sure to link in the description. But, you know, the cannon rush is, I feel like it's a rite of passage if you're a StarCraft player. First of all, losing to it, learning how to stop it, doing it yourself, eventually, for the most part, growing out of it where you can't lose to it or really use it in a competitive match. Although we do have some games where cannon rushes occur, we have had some metas where it pops up. So let's hop into this.
Is considered both creative and also the most annoying one. This is certainly a cannon rush, a strategy that's as old as the game itself. Today we'll embark on a journey to explore the origins and history of this particular strategy. But first of all, what is a cannon rush? While this strategy could be played in different ways and it evolved over the years, the original idea was very basic. The Protoss player builds his photon cannons outside the vision of his opponent and then slowly besieges him from different angles. It either locks the defending player on one base or straight up threatens his one base economy. While this strategy doesn't always finish the game straight away, it gives the cannon rusher a huge advantage and time to expand his own economy and forces. Cannon rush first appeared in StarCraft 1, but it also existed in other RTS games. This is a common strategy for this genre, however, perhaps only in StarCraft it's been so powerful, and if not scouted early, it was very difficult to counter as...
Yeah, the very first BattleNet championships, I believe, were won with a cannon rush. This was pre-replays. But like the very, very, very first StarCraft tournament, I remember somebody making, or hearing, because you couldn't watch replays back then, people would like write articles about it. People making a cannon, pylon and a cannon inside of the guy's base on the corner. So basically the worst kind of cannon rush. And it's bad just because if you check around inside your main, you're going to stop it, right? So, cannon rushes became more and more sophisticated over time. The one that we're looking at right now, my brother actually lost to in a tournament, I want to say like 8 or 9 years into the game being out. There was a map where you could fit 2 pylons and a cannon behind the Zerg's minerals, and there wasn't creep to block it. And he never saw it before. So it just killed him. He didn't even know what the fuck was going on. And then, as you can see here on these maps, this where my mouse cursor is kind of by my face, this area is airtight. You can't have lings or probes go through there, and the same is true for it touching the minerals. So you're actually able to literally cannon rush behind their own buildings. And in StarCraft 2, the way that units block each other, or sorry, the way that buildings block units is probably a better way to put it. It's much easier to cannon rush because you're always certain that you're going to have stuff walled off. There's not moments like Brood War where like it looks like it should block it, but it doesn't.
Especially in lower leagues. At the same time, since cannon rush relies heavily on the element of surprise, it was a very inconsistent strategy and was generally a non-issue on a more higher level. The trick behind the cannon rush is simple. Photon cannons are relatively cheap and can strike both air and ground, and they also have enough damage to quickly dispatch any early game units.
So this type of cannon rush that we're seeing here, what's funny is like, this kind of cannon rush wouldn't work in StarCraft 1 because StarCraft 1, from low ground to high ground, there's a chance to miss. So when they tried to change that, basically to make the game less random in StarCraft 2, it turned cannon rushes low ground into high ground as actually viable, which wasn't really expected. And so it became about, can you get vision onto the high ground? Because the other thing that they changed is that you can't see what's shooting down from high ground onto low ground. You have to have that vision or you can't fire at it. And so in a cannon rush like this, you can make a cannon down here. You can see the 2 pylons literally block it off perfectly. This is something they fixed later. But just getting vision onto the high ground could allow you to then punish and hit the workers that would be mining at these mineral patches. Now, organically, the fix to this for Zerg was that a sunken colony or a spine crawler, if you're in StarCraft 2, would outrange a cannon. But it's not that easy to set up. Cannons don't miss with high ground attacks, do they? They do not, chat. No. And so this unlocked a whole slew of interesting technical cannon rushes that could be done in the natural.
Even if you can break the defensive position, It would cost you too much time and money, and your goal is to try to stop it either in the very beginning or at least with your first units and prevent it from growing or targeting your second base. Usually it's done with workers, which is why a great cannon rush must be done close to different obstacles like mineral patches. This would create a natural shield and reduce the angle of attack, preventing 360 degrees around, which gives enough time for cannons to complete. This also holds true in StarCraft 2, and
just going back a second, these positions in the cannon rush as well. Cannon rushes in StarCraft 1 and 2 are always better if they can also control the ramp. So, like, if you can look here, it'd be under the mini-map right down here, but you could cannon rush down there and punish them, but then they're just going to expand somewhere else and ignore it. So, most of the time, the best cannon rushes both punish the expansion and inhibit movement from the ramp to whether it's your main or if they make another base, all that kind of stuff.
Gives enough time for cannons to complete. This also holds true in StarCraft 2, and since the beta days, Cannon Rush became a notorious strategy. It appeared in community discussions, different memes, and even referenced in songs dedicated to StarCraft 2. But on a more higher level, it was a less common problem for players, and it was quite easy to deal with. It wasn't an ultimate weapon, as
some gun colonies do outrange cannons. It's just hard to get the angle where they will hit.
It was usually pretty easy to scout the cannon rush. However, many pro players learned new ways to abuse this strategy. Have you ever seen those little rocks around your ramp between the main base and the second base? There was one incredibly strong way to play a cannon rush in ZVP. Since Zerg players don't really have any early game.
So this is impossible in StarCraft 1 because workers can slip through two pylons next to each other. Whereas in StarCraft 1, if pylon like down here to the left side or at the very bottom of this rush, you couldn't fit through. StarCraft 2, you're just totally locked out.
Range units, except for a Queen, which also had a short attack range in early Wings of Liberty, it was common to wall off the ramp with 3 pylons and start building cannons around the second base. This move would isolate the Zerg player on a single base, which pretty much meant a defeat. This was also possible to do for Terran with 3 bunkers. This is why the little destructible plate was added. However, it didn't stop the Protoss players from cannon rush.
And we actually had a map where there was a destructible plate that the map maker forgot to add on one of the locations on the map, and Parting did the same cannon rush and won, and they had to change the map mid-season GSL.
Now they just had to come up with a new way to do it. There were some maps where you could block the exit from the second base and create a wall that would threaten the natural. Here's an example of a match between MC and Idra.
If he's going to decide to plant anything behind this hatchery, there's a lot of room there.
1, 2, 3 pylons walling in. EG's Idra, the second scout probe that was out, now trying to advance forward. Idra now sending all the drones. Idra, who claimed he...
This is my brother talking, by the way. This is it shows you that even though they kind of had an idea of StarCraft maps, it didn't occur to map makers that stuff like this could happen, right? And so they had to, you know, for instance, now you notice basically all StarCraft 2 maps have a ramp or a slope of some sort that connects the bases, so you can't just cleanly cut it off.
He was going to 2-0. OGS MC is on the verge of losing his natural expansion. There's one photon cannon going down. Will he be able to get a second one off in time? Idra can't quite decide what pylon he wants to target. Going to go for that southern one, but the 2 probes with the re-wall off. Idra in a lot of trouble.
Yep, here we're going to see the first pylon going down. Now the drone's going to be working on that photon cannon. Certainly going to get out. One of the probes does go down. A third cannon will stop here. Now, is he going to cancel? He's not going to cancel the hatchery. And
GG! Idra doesn't even make the attempt to do any sort of cheese. Doesn't try to go for a Nidus Worm. Doesn't try to go for a Baneling Bust. Gives up the game.
Similar cannon rush style could still be used even in Legacy of the Void up to this day, but the biggest cannon rush upset that ever happened in history was in Heart of the Swarm, many years ago. During WCS America 2014, Haas attempted to do a crazy cannon rush against Jaedong, possibly one of the greatest Zerg players ever.
Yeah, this was an iconic moment. Haas was known as a pretty cheesy Protoss, but there was this one event where his stuff was working. He was cooking. And I don't know, some players complain about cheese like this, and honestly, I've talked to some developers that like worry this is bad for the game, but I think any kind of rush with buildings is a fun part of RTS that makes it different from any other kind of game you can and experience.
This match became one of the most iconic cannon rush moments in StarCraft 2 history.
So this is a 5 pylon wall. So this is so inefficient. I mean, the reason why this area has such a wide berth is because stuff like the 3 pylon block or the 3 bunker block, map makers are trying to organically phase it out. And of course, this is against Jaedong, who is, in periods of StarCraft 1, the best Zerg of all time. And then for periods of StarCraft 2, maybe the best Zerg. There was a period where he was, for a shorter period of time, the best Zerg, I would say, or at least one of them. It was kind of a confusing time because we had everything regionalized in WCS, and it wasn't like players from certain regions could just go to other regions and play. So it was like Jaedong was representing NA, even though he's like Korean and had practiced versus Koreans the whole time. But anyways, this was a crazy game.
It's a different cannon rush than I had in mind.
What? What?
He's gonna make sure nothing
What?
is ever.
What the? What? this.
What
Somebody tell Haas that this does not actually make sense. There's no reason to invest 600 minerals in pylon.
Yeah, you're laughing, but he has practiced this, man. So you can laugh all you want, but there's probably a pretty good shot that this is going to work.
This is never going to
No?
work.
We'll see. I'm pretty sure that he has practiced this before. Jaedong is losing a lot of mining
Is that a
time.
gateway?
Yes. Maybe this is actually part of the strat, so the Zealots can run through. One cannon is about to finish up. Jaedong will be absolutely trapped on 2 bases.
You can't hop workers through. No.
Man.
You can just kill the rocks. You can build a
that's
spine
true.
crawler and you can kill the rocks
That's
and
true,
go
I
off the
forgot
back.
about the rock. Still though, this cannon is going to do some work. This wall is up, more he cancels.
Now look at that. This is organized in such a way, it's like teeth almost. The workers can fit through in the diagonals, and then he can replug it back up. So he's able to slide the worker through. The gateway's canceled. The gateway's basically like a square block in Tetris almost, and it plugs this up. So as the cannon finishes and it drives the workers away, because the Zerg knows, okay, I haven't stopped the rush with my drones. Now I have to basically try to save the hatchery or sack the hatchery and go back. Now the probe can come through and the cannons can advance on the hatch.
Okay. Well, Ben. Do the commentary, please.
I'm trying to find the words, but so I mean, it looks like this hatchery's dead. Jaedong is going to have a couple of spine crawlers on the low ground, but he can't actually reposition them to fight the cannon. He ends up actually canceling one.
And now Hess is like, cool. I'll drop a gateway. I'm
And
going to expand.
There is literally no way for Jaedong to secure a base now.
Overall, with very few exceptions.
Yeah, with that rush back there, just as an example. Because I think, when people hear cannon rush, they're thinking it doesn't have to kill the opponent, as in it gives the killing blow. Now the game is effectively unwinnable because the Zerg can't put a hatchery down. The Zerg has to kill 4 cannons and potentially more behind the pylons while the Protoss takes another base. And we all know that Protoss should never have 2 bases to Zerg's 1. They're just way ahead.
Secure a base now.
So I'll skip ahead.
Catch your opponent by surprise was a strategy on a pro level. It was more common in PvP, where you could catch your opponent by surprise.
So this is another example of people just making maps, and trying to have interesting shapes inside of them, and then you realize there's an exploit like this. And StarCraft 2 had a hard time managing this because of the tight buildings, the tight building setup. So you could do way more wall-offs.
And it was
More
also
easily.
the case for ZVP. In some situations, you could also try to do a mega risky cannon rush on the main base between mineral patches, but it was
So this is similar to what my brother lost to in StarCraft 1. It's a little bit harder to do in StarCraft 1, but if the area is very small back there, you can actually pull it off.
still a rare thing to see on a pro level. Nevertheless, except for listed examples, this strategy relied heavily on not being scouted. It was incredibly difficult to pull it off if your opponent was looking for it. Hence, this is why every successful cannon rush on a high level was often celebrated. But things changed with Legacy of the Void. Well, actually things stayed the same for some time, and I would even say cannon rush got a bit worse because now the economy was a bit different and you had more workers at start, which could successfully...
So yeah, he's 100% right about that. The fact that you had so many workers. That really changed StarCraft 2. Looking back, I don't know if I like it as much. I know I said in a lot of casts that like I really liked the change, and I did initially, but I think it made early game not as interesting as early StarCraft 2 or early StarCraft 1, just because you get bases up so fast. You could get away with cannon rushes more easily when there's less workers because you're less likely to want to give up one worker to check for something. Whenever you send one worker out to do anything, you're sacrificing a lot.
To defend your base. However, the addition of shield batteries opened the gates of hell for all Cannon Rush haters. It happened in November 2017, 2 years after Legacy of the Void release. Previously, Cannon Rush was mainly used to contain you on one base. Against Terran and Protoss, it was also possible to threaten the main base, but it was a very rare occasion. However, with the addition of shield batteries, you could now attack with units and get back to your static defense to regenerate, and keep on applying pressure. This immediately led to the creation of many similar strategies which involved shield regeneration, cannon rushing, and war prism or just unit micro. Now, you didn't even need to actually threaten your opponent's bases immediately, you just needed to set up your offensive positions very close to bases. Ideally,
honestly, I loved casting these matches. I know it's really hard to fight, but Robo Immortal with the cannons or then the batteries there, it was such a hype game.
Protoss players still try to cancel your second base, but the main goal was not to contain you, but straight up destroy you with this new build order. This totally changed the perspective on a cannon rush. Once used to be a cunning, cheeky strategy, now it was a full-blown offensive with structures. One thing remained the same, the outrage about...
Look at how you could micro in between the buildings, it's crazy.
This strategy, as it was very difficult to counter for defending players. It also became much more common on a pro level, with many nail-biting series and micro-intensive battles between different players. With this change, the cannon rush could be expanded into multiple different styles. Against Zerg players, you could play with Immortals, for other races the Void Rays were a very good solution. And after a while, many Protoss cheesers actually went for using Stalkers to strike as early as they could. But even the old school cannon rush didn't go away. It's still a worthy strategy, and while it still relies on the lack of scouting, players only seem to get better with it. Many years the majority of the community believed that it was practically impossible to cannon rush a top-tier Terran player because of cheap marines and the ability to lift structures and just fly away, and yet it happened with SOS and Maru.
The cannon rush has begun.
It looks so peaceful from his point of view. He's just like looking around. He's like, yeah, I'll make the next cannon here and just do all the damage in the world. For Maru to defend this is going to be so tricky. Now he's trying to start working on that one probe, but that's why there is a second probe, a Maynard probe here, to be ready and in position.
Well, this is already very, very bad for Maru, man. I don't see how he stops this. This is about the time when you start to lift your structures up, let the orbital finish and try and save as many SCVs as possible, because he cannot fight this.
And SOS already thinking ahead. He knows that there's going to be potentially a Reaper counter-attacking his mineral line. He's already got the gateway on the way, gets another cannon instead of his main mineral line. Going for gas, all he has to go for is some Stalkers, some Adept. He's going to force the command center to fly away already here because mining was about to be prevented.
SOS smartly cancelling that third cannon. He's put in a few hundred minerals here into this maneuver against Maru. But Maru is not dead yet. He does still have that factory across the map.
On the high ground there, that's going to help a lot.
That's so sick. He puts the Stalkers on the high ground. SOS is my favorite player to cast. So fun. I mean, he just did some of the craziest strats.
To attack there. By now, Maru should know what's happening. And actually, SOS warps in on the other side. Interesting. He's going to force an explosion here from that one Widow Mine and then remove it. SOS is committing to defend on the high ground. He thinks that he thinks that SOS is going to be reinforcing there, but SOS is attacking at the front.
He is, and it looks like Maru's getting stretched really thin here. The Viking does do bonus damage against the Stalkers, but there's too much. The Stalkers pick it off out of the ground. Maru picking up his base again to try and go somewhere else. Repairing with that with those SCVs on that Cyclone. He actually doesn't have a ton of minerals to continue these repairs, and he just has to tap out.
The most interesting thing about Cannon Rush is how dividing it is. A lot of people in the community were always advocating for Cannon Rush to be removed or at least nerfed heavily, because StarCraft 2 should not have a universal strategy that would be A. easy to execute, B. incredibly effective on all levels. This especially became a much bigger concern after the addition of shield batteries, since cannon rushing became a much more powerful tool. There are even dedicated cannon rush players who can climb from low leagues to Grandmaster League using only this strategy. At the same time, a different part of the community is praising StarCraft 2 for this addition, because this is a unique opportunity to play as you want and with a special, dedicated playstyle. And whether you like cannon rushing or not, you gotta admit, it's always entertaining to watch games with it, at least because the action starts very early. What do you think about cannon rush in StarCraft 2? Is it a good thing or a bad thing for this game? Leave your opinion in the comments and check out our other content related to game mechanics.
This is an excellent video. Definitely add this guy, subscribe to his channel. Esports storyteller. I personally love that cannon rushes are in the game. First of all, the frustration of losing to a cannon rush, then copying it, learning how to beat people with it, eventually learning how to stop it yourself. Like I said, it's a real rite of passage. It's crazy that we had periods in StarCraft 2 specifically where like you had these crazy advanced cannon rushes that could go all the way into like an immortal rush. We have shield batteries backing it up. StarCraft 1 cannon rushes are still possible. It's a little bit like a hard counter to certain builds, but StarCraft 2, there's a mechanic where you can force workers back there, so it becomes like a micro technique. Let me know what you think about the cannon rushes and this kind of content, me reacting to videos on YouTube, StarCraft history stuff. I have some more history videos planned for you guys down the road. I've been a little bit busy doing both GSL and ASL, but thank you so much for joining me. And you're always welcome to join me on my Twitch stream. It's Tasteless TV on Twitch, where I record these videos live with my community. Thank you so much. Have a good day, and I will see you in a future video.